Hello everybody. Spring is finally starting to show itself, which means so are the bears. It just so happens that April is Bear Awareness Month. We're very fortunate to have a special guest come speak with us about bear safety and awareness from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. We're going to be covering topics like bear encounters, equipment you can carry with you to protect yourself from bears, bear awareness and safety for residents and their homes, and when to call professionals like law enforcement and what you can expect from them. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our special guest, Cory, from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. And welcome to Alaska Lifestyle.
My name is Cory. I'm born and raised here in Peters Creek, Alaska. Hunting, fishing, camping, being outdoors is a large part of my upbringing and something that I use in my passion to further my professional development as a wildlife biologist for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. For the last 8 years, I've been here in Anchorage as the management biologist and now as the area biologist for Unit 14C, which encompasses Anchorage and the municipality of Anchorage, which represents about 41% of the state's population.
Welcome everybody to our second video for Bear Awareness Month. In this video, we're going to discuss equipment, non-lethal and lethal, that you should be carrying with you while in the Alaska outdoors in case you come across that bear encounter.
What are essential items to carry with you for bear protection in the wilderness that are something that you should not be out in the wilderness without?
Yeah, so when people are out in the backcountry, aside from general, like having enough supplies, food, stuff to deal with medical issues, you got to think about wildlife and the possibility of a bear encounter even during the winter months. If you walk too close to a den or ski over a den, we always recommend carrying some sort of deterrent, whether that's a noisemaker, bear spray, a firearm if you feel comfortable with it. Those are kind of some of the main deterrents. What goes along with that is being able to access them so they're not buried underneath at the bottom of your pack underneath the medical kit, but also being able to use them appropriately and effectively.
When you say noisemaker, that could be anything like a bell. They make noise-specific bear noisemakers?
Yeah, they market bear bells. Sure. Really any type of bell. Bring 3 or 4 kids with you that are, yelling and screaming as you're trying to enjoy this scenic hike. But just anything that is a little bit, is a kind of a non-natural noise that is audible. Some people play music, that works. Realize that when you have those bear bells, it kind of impacts your own hearing, right? Because you have some background. What we don't want folks to do is walk or hike with earbuds in, because then it completely takes away your ability to hear, right? Like that's a huge
that rustling in the woods over there, not going to hear it.
You're not going to hear it, yep. And you may walk into something that you just missed because you couldn't hear the bear vocalizing, hey, you're too close, or popping its jaws. But noisemakers work, little kids work, just something that provides a different noise and is a little bit loud so that you give animals a pre-warning, like, hey, we're coming through, so that you don't startle them.
Yeah, the earbuds is a great tip, because every time I've thought about going on a walk or hike or a bike ride or something, like let me put my earbuds in so I have music, or if you have headphones and stuff. And that's something I bet a lot of people probably don't realize, is you enjoying your music is putting you in, just taking a whole sense away from your ability to detect danger that's around you. So that's probably a really important tip.
Yeah, there's all sorts of noise makers that folks carry. Anytime you use something with pyrotechnics or fire, you have the chance to start a forest fire, and we don't want to do that. There's bird bangers that are just like a little flare gun that you shoot it off and it makes a noise as it goes screaming through the air. Kind of the best and the tried and true stuff that's consistent is make a noise, traveling in groups, and having a deterrent you're comfortable with, whether that's bear spray, a firearm, something like that.
What about a whistle? And if you did carry a whistle, when do you want to use it? Is it something you just periodically want to blow the whistle for, or is it something that you would start using once you see that bear?
Yeah, so a whistle works great. It's a noisemaker. Periodically give it a blow, they're pretty loud, lets everything know and other people know that you're in the area. It's not something that you gotta keep in your mouth and blow the whole time as you're walking through, but it definitely works as a noisemaker. When you have that encounter with a bear, I would stick with human voice so you're not escalating the situation, because you want to talk to them in kind of a calm demeanor, kind of reassuring them, hey, I'm not a threat, just passing through, let me get out of your space, there's no issue here.
Okay. So not going absolutely hysterical, yelling and screaming, talking to it in a calm voice to let it know that I'm not going anywhere, but I'm not here to hurt you.
So when we talk about non-lethal options and lethal options, like when should they be used? When would you want to use? And this is assuming like the person that we're dealing with, if they're carrying a firearm, let's assume they're comfortable with it. So they have this a range of non-lethal to lethal options available to them. When would you want to use one over the other? Would you try one before the other first, or was there a certain situation where you would just go with one, the lethal or non-lethal?
That's super tough to decide, because like I said, everyone has their own line in their sand and their own comfort level around wildlife, bears. So someone that's really comfortable may be comfortable with being able to read bear behavior and demeanor and know how to react, and so they may feel more comfortable with bear spray or non-lethal deterrent, where someone that may not be as comfortable but is really proficient with a firearm may decide to go straight to pulling that out, and maybe they're going to fire a warning shot if the bear gets X distance, and versus firing at the bear at another distance. So it really depends on the individual. Regardless, whatever deterrent or tool that you're going to have for your protection, it goes back to being able to easily access it and be proficient with it and know how to use it.
Could a warning shot, could that work pretty well to scare a bear away, or is that something that could actually kind of amp it up?
We've seen several cases where warning shots have been effective. It really depends on the situation and the animal.
So, I mean, if we went in a group, let's say you and I were hiking, would it be seen as appropriate to come across a bear to maybe have one person on a less lethal option and one on a lethal option? So, if you had the bear spray and I, had whatever firearm we had, that way you could try to do a non-lethal approach first, and then if it didn't work or failed, then you would have that lethal cover.
That's totally something that could be doable. There are all sorts of options to choose from on how that's set up. Realizing that when you deploy bear spray, depending on where the person is with your lethal, if they're downwind, they're going to catch a little bit of bear spray and immediately watering your eyes, and it is very difficult, if not impossible, to fight through a good shot of bear spray right to the face, especially when you take a big inhale and it gets in your lungs. So you could theoretically incapacitate your lethal shooter. So you have to be aware of the limitation of what happens, what that cloud looks like, especially with bear spray if you're gonna use it, and that's gonna be an option.
So I want to talk about the bear spray on how to deploy it, and so people have a good understanding. And then we talked about the wind and stuff. So considerations when deploying it as well. Bear
spray is essentially is a can like this. This is just a little sheath for it. Little belt holder. On top is an orange trigger safety. So when you go to deploy bear spray, one hand goes on the bottom, your dominant hand comes on top. You pull this safety off and it slides off, and there's some clicks there. I won't do it here because this is a live can of bear spray. You aim it in front of the bear, and then you depress the trigger here, and you're going to give it a 1 to 3 second burst. You're going to put that cloud out there because we're trying to get that bear to run through the cloud. So if you aim at the bear, you're going to put that cloud over the top. So you're aiming in front of the bear and down a little bit to put that cloud out in front of you, so that bear has to go through that cloud of capsaicin before it's able to get to you. These cans do have an expiration date. It's usually listed on the side or the bottom of the can. So make sure, as you're getting ready for spring and you're thinking about hikes, to double check your can of bear spray. Make sure that it isn't expired, because that propellant does go bad after several years. So just make sure that is the case. That way you know you have a can that is going to give it the best chance to work.
When deploying it, do you want to do any type of motion from like side to side or up or down, or is just that at the bear in front of it, will the can fog enough that you don't need to really worry about doing like a sweeping motion or anything?
Yeah, so this can, when you press down on the trigger and deploys the bear spray, it sends out a jet, and then as that gets further away, it aerosolizes and puts a big cloud in front of you.
If it's super windy, would it blow that aerosol away?
So if it's
Because it's not like a gel or a liquid, is it?
no, it's a little bit of a liquid that aerosolizes. So yes, you're right. If it's super windy, realize that it's gonna either, depending on which way the wind is going, you could deploy it, and before the bear even gets to it, it could be completely blown to your left, to your right, or in the worst case scenario, be blown back to you if you're downwind and incapacitate you.
Yep, that would definitely be worst case scenario, to be in a panic situation, pull out your bear spray, spray it, and you just get the full cloud back on your face while a bear's attacking you. That would be probably a horrible situation. Golly. So that brings to the point of being conscious and having the practice. I can't wait to shoot one of these off, and just to get the experience. Do a quick wind check or something. Make sure you're not going to be.
And you may not have time to do a wind check. Best case scenario, yeah, you there's a noticeable breeze, and so you can feel that on your face. But sometimes these encounters happen very quick. They're over very quick. You may not have time to do that, and that it's something that folks got to take into account and realize that when you deploy this. And I've had it on calm days. We've used it on bears in town, and immediately have gotten what we call blowback from the can, and bear ran up a tree, but I'm sitting in the back there crying my eyes out as I'm trying to recover to figure out what has to happen next. So
Right.
Just be aware that in addition to wind, some of these cans do have blowback, or if something gets caught in there and deflects the stream or some of that spray up, you could get a little bit.
Is there any ways to quickly resolve a blowback type situation? Is it water, milk?
So it's capsaicin, so the same kind of active ingredient as pepper spray. You want to try to stay away from water, because water just flushes it down your body. You want something like milk, because that helps actually neutralize the capsaicin. If you do get it in your eyes or on a body part, don't touch it with your hands and then touch your eyes, because you can transfer it and all of a sudden your eyes will start burning. One of the companies does now make a kind of an agent, another aerosol, specifically for counteracting capsaicin and bear spray.
Okay, that's good to know.
And most people obviously hiking around out in the wilderness are hiking with milk. It's going to be generally water they're going to have with them. So if you do want to try to get some of that out of your eyes or off your face, and all you have available to you is water, it'd be really nice if you have someone to help you out to help pour that water. But position yourself in a way that the water runoff is not going to be going down your body. So instead of standing up and pouring it over you, it's going to run down. Maybe if you can lay down and then pour the water, so the water would run, off your head. You can still get some burning on your scalp and whatnot, but it's going to be a lot better there than running down your body to more soft tissue. So if you do need to use water, because that's all you have, and obviously the bear may hopefully not be an issue at this point, so you have the ability to lay down and have somebody or yourself pour the water in a position where it's not going to run down on you.
Yeah, those are good tips.
So speaking of bear spray, for everybody here that wants to get into outdoor activities, or being in Alaska, we have a lot of tourism. So a lot of people come up and they want to go on the hikes and see the mountains, and they want to see the wildlife, and they end up putting themselves out there. So for anybody, where can people find bear spray, a good bell for putting on a backpack or something that they can get when they're up here, so they can go enjoy Alaska's nature and be more prepared for a possible encounter?
Yeah, any of the big sporting stores, any of the big grocery stores up here, in South Central Alaska, will carry those things. The other place, there are several social media groups that have bear spray loaner programs so that folks coming up that don't want to buy a 2-pack of bear spray for a 1-week trip can go through there and get a full loaner can, then return it when they're done, because you can't, obviously don't try to fly with bear spray, because that's one of the things they don't want you to put on the aircraft. There's several options there to get your hands on bear spray, noisemakers, stuff like that.
So then, talking about the non-lethals as well, because we kind of covered, sounds like really the main ones are going to be some sort of noisemaker and bear spray for non-lethal. And we can obviously double up on these. It's not one or the other. I mean, if you have the ability to, put that bell on your backpack or dog or whatever, and then also carry bear spray, it doesn't hurt anything to have more than one with you.
As long as you're comfortable and effective.
All right, so so now switching from non-lethal to lethal options. What are our lethal options that we can have? I mean, is firearms it, or are there other things available that would be considered lethal that people can carry or use?
At the point when it comes to lethal options, especially when you're looking at brown bears, black bears, firearms are kind of it in terms of lethal options. And really that ranges from going moose hunting and have a large caliber rifle with them for shooting moose that can double up as bear protection, to folks that are going hiking and have maybe a 12 gauge shotgun or some sort of handgun. That range of platforms can work. Realize that each one of those platforms have their own pros and cons and limitations to their effective range, so that needs to be taken into account. And additionally, how trained and how proficient the individual is that is going to use one of those platforms, realizing that most folks go to the range, they shoot at static targets. When you put folks in front of a moving target, it completely changes the dynamic. Right now you have something that's coming towards you that's completely different than practicing on a static target. Try to tailor your training, or if you want to get more proficient maybe with these specific encounters, is try to find some sort of moving target that will kind of help prepare you a little bit better for those situations.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, discussing some of the different calibers, you mentioned hunting rifles and stuff like that. I don't want to get too much into that because there's a million different hunting rounds that we could go into that'd be bear effective. I'm kind of thinking more of the stuff that you would see people commonly carry for a backpacking trip, hiking trip, camping, something like that. What calibers do you see being most effective against bear?
Most people hiking don't, unless they're hunting or doing something like that, they don't typically carry a centerfire rifle where you have your 300 Win Mag or your blackouts or stuff like that. Most of what folks are carrying, if they're doing day hikes and they're carrying lethal, are your handguns or your shotgun platforms. Most commonly used gauge or caliber out there for shotgun is a 12 gauge. It's effective, it works. Moving over to your handgun, folks have killed bears in charges using 10 millimeters, 44 mags, 45s, a lot of that effectiveness and that platform's ability to stop a threat or a charge or a bear depends on the shooter and how proficient they are and where that shot placement is. Shot placement is critical on these types of situations, and really just in general when you're talking about hunting, right? Because if you hit an animal in a non-vital or fatty tissue, it's not going to prove fatal. It's not going to stop what's going on. That's where training and being proficient with the platform you're using really comes into play here, and people have preference on what calibers they want to shoot, and if you're proficient with that caliber, then by all means, that's the one you feel most comfortable with, then take that as your caliber of choice.
Is there a round that proven to be more effective or less effective, like having 13 rounds of 9 compared to 7 rounds of 45? Is the bigger bullet the better one, or the more of the little one, or all just comes down to the shooter and their placement?
A lot of it comes down to shooter and placement, more muzzle velocity coming out, and for an animal like an adult brown bear, that muzzle velocity is huge, and that energy transfer is huge for getting penetration into the animal, so you get into the vitals and can effectively stop that charge. We do see that hollow points tend to expand too quickly to reach the vitals, so we try to talk to folks about the different kinds and thinking about a hard cast bullet compared to a a hollow point, that's real popular with home defense, just doesn't work very well with our big game animals where they're thick boned and trying to get in and getting that penetration.
Yeah, I feel those the hollow point would fragment really fast once it got in the first penetration. It would just kind of spread out and not get into where vital organs would be to make it not want to keep chasing you or coming after you.
Yeah, that is definitely a concern. Yeah. So it's that combination of caliber and bullet selection that really will give you the best odds to get that penetration to successfully stop a charge, whether it's with a centerfire rifle, a handgun. Most of the shotgun rounds are full metal anyways.
So we got some examples here that Joey brought. We got a shotgun shell that's a slug, and having a slug for a big game animal compared to like buckshot or anything that's going to use pellets, the slug is definitely going to be that better option, right?
Yeah, this is a shotgun slug for a 12 gauge shotgun. You can get differing sizes from an ounce and a quarter, ounce and 3/8, and they make a whole bunch of other ones. You want to end on the heavier side of the shotgun slugs so that you get that penetration into the animal and get into the vitals there. On the other hand, we have a handgun round here, so full solid here on top, which is great. So that's going to keep it from fragmenting and help it hold together as it gets into the animal and hopefully penetrate into the vitals is what we're looking for.
Just a show with that, and this is a 10 mil. And then the slug, 12 gauge slug. And then as far as platform goes, and these for everybody have been cleared and they are safe. So this one's yours. This one's a Mossberg, correct?
Mossberg Shockwave.
So that's one of the guns that you generally carry in the Jeep and do a lot of off-roading.
In the Jeep, depending on camping situation where we're going, it's heavy for a hike if you're doing a long-term hike, but definitely for off-roading or longer-term camping, this is a great weapon to have for large game animals.
I have a very similar one that keep like in the camper or vehicle or tent or anything, or when I'm moving around just camp to get firewood or whatever, I'll sling that on my back, and that way when I'm around camp, I have something with me. Generally the handgun as well, but. So that leads us into shot placement. So we talked about how crucial and critical a good shot placement is, because my understanding, bears are giant tanks with a lot of armor on them. So to be able to stop them and put them down when needed, that's where the shot placement comes into play. So if we were going to talk shot placement, if we're looking at a bear coming straight at us, and then what about a bear that's going to be broadside to us? So where are we looking at shot placement differences between straight at us versus another situation where it may be a broadside view? So where would we want to be aiming for those?
Yeah, so in most cases where folks are using lethal means to stop something, we're talking about a frontal charge. And really when you look at the scale of what vitals are actually present, there's not a lot. It's not like that broadside shot where you have heart and lungs, that basketball size vital area that we all try to get when we're as hunters trying to get moose or harvesting an animal. So when it comes to a charge, a lot of that vital isn't there for you, right? You're really the vital that is open is real small. So what you're doing at that point is you're looking to try to get shots on at center mass. So imagine that bear coming at you, imagine there's a circle on it and you're going straight for the center of it, which ends up being right around mid to high chest on a bear that's coming at you. You may in the process end up hitting them in the skull, but compared to the entire body, that's a relatively small area you're trying to hit, and it's moving, right? It's not just a level, straight charge, like they're loping, they're running. So that head and that body is moving up and down. It's really hard to hit. So most folks that we see that end up having to go down the road of lethal aim for center mass on the body there as it's charging them.
I don't know exactly where a heart is on a bear. I'm assuming somewhere over in this region around where the lungs are, or is it in that center mass area?
Really that heart, as you change As broadside, it's sitting, kind of at the height of the elbow behind the front shoulder. So it sits a little bit lower than what most people think, and then the lungs take up a majority of that space as your broadside. When you turn frontal and the bear is looking at you, when you look at that vital, really it's that line right up and down here, right? Because that heart kind of sits in that bird cage and is protected by the sternum, just like humans, right? And so that it changes a little bit. Now you put them on all fours rather than standing up on their hind legs to see that. Now that conformation completely changed, and that heart is buried into the chest, so it's pretty well protected. So you're trying to get those rounds into center mass because you're trying to push it through, the sternum and that bird cage to get it into the lungs.
Talking about the safety, before using the firearms, what are some concerns when you're about to use lethal that you need to be aware of, or are very important to your safety and people around you?
Yeah, just make sure that you have trained with that firearms, you know how it functions, but also still be aware of, even though this is a stressful situation, I've been in bear charges, super stressful, you still got to remember you're responsible for that projectile. Follow those firearm safety rules the best you can. You have a bear charge situation going on and you're using a lethal means to stop it. We still try to the best of our ability, follow those firearm safety rules because we don't want to hurt anyone else, whether it's in our own group or in another group down the trail.
I think a good example is a friend of mine told me a bear story that happened to him a while back, and he was out camping with his brother, and they were both in separate tents, and a bear had come into camp and gone basically in and through my friend's tent. And he did have a handgun with him, and so he had grabbed the handgun but never put any rounds off at the time. One, may have not been needed by the time he got the gun, but two, he wasn't sure where in relation to that his brother's tent was, or if his brother had moved out of the tent or something like that. So, he made the conscious decision not to start just putting rounds out because he knew that he did not know the location of his fellow party member. So I think that was a great example of having the thought process enough, even after the stressful situation of being that direct encounter with the bear, to still not put his partner and his friend, in harm's way.
I think a lot of that comes down to training and being proficient with whatever tool you're using. I think that's a huge, important thing to take into. Like, there's a lot of people that, like when I first moved to Alaska, like I was relatively new with guns and having a concealed carry in Florida and stuff like that. Being here and then being on the trail, it's like, the amount of times that I've gone shooting isn't that great, isn't that huge. So in that situation, am I just going to panic, grab my gun and start shooting? Or do you stop, think about it with only having the seconds to do it, making the right decisions at the right times to keep everyone involved safe? I think that's a huge takeaway from this, if anything, is your tools that you use and knowing how to use them efficiently and effectively is very important, with safety being probably one of that top considerations.
And to remind folks that what we're talking about here is like the smallest proportion, one of the smallest proportions of a bear encounter. So we're talking about like what's some of the worst case scenarios. Like I said, 90% of bear encounters here in the state, we can take it to the state level here, don't end up with more than they see the bear and they walk away. Right. And most of those, we don't even know the bear was there in the first place.
Very good point.
We have bikes that go up and down Campbell Creek, Chester Creek. Both of those are salmon-bearing streams. Mm-hmm. During the middle of salmon returns, and we hardly see any encounters with bears, right? They don't want to interact with us any more than they have to, right? They're looking for food. They're just looking to survive. So all these tools and all this stuff when it comes to charges and what caliber and being proficient, that's kind of like the last resort, that 1% of cases. So
worst case scenario,
right?
Yeah. Life or death situation, and that's when typical lethal options would always, when that comes into play, is when it's a worst case life or death situation, and you've exhausted other options. Right?
Yeah, and it happens so infrequently. People encounter bears here in town. Out of the 8 years that I've been in Anchorage in either my past position or my current position, I've had a bear charge me once. Out of 8 years of being putting myself in front of bears or into situations where I'm likely going to get charged, I just don't have them happen all that frequently. Once in 8 years, I don't want folks to think that when you're out and about, every bear encounter is going to be one where you have to use your lethal force. A lot of these are deterred just in that initial encounter where you stop, make yourself look big. Bear usually goes one way, the person goes the other way, and they can continue on down the trail.
Right. Kind of going back to what we talked about in the first video, they're more likely to want to leave you alone and leave the situation and get out of that situation rather than attack and fight you.
And the only thing that gets publicized about bears is the 1% of the interactions, right? The charges, the near misses. They don't publicize every time they saw a bear at 30 yards and the bear walked away. Trying to get the right perception out there in terms of bears and that percentages of how they interact with people and what we're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the point of the Bear Awareness Month and, even the videos we're doing and other information being put out by ADFG is so that we can coexist together without humans or bears hurt or killed. If you're out in the Alaska wilderness, you obviously enjoy nature, you probably want to see the wildlife. Most of the times you're probably lucky to come across that bear to be able to see that sighting, and it's going to be as simple as you get to see the bear on a hillside and it wanders off. That's something that most people out there want to come across. So it's good that we cover everything from the average encounter to the life or death scenario, but you're 100% correct that life or death one is such a small chance of happening. You shouldn't have the mindset that every time you go hiking you're going to need to kill a bear. It should be every time you go hiking you might be lucky enough to see some of Alaska's beautiful wildlife we have.
We appreciate you taking the time to watch our video today, and we hope you learned something that'll help keep you and the bears safer while enjoying the outdoors. Please check out the links below in the description for quick access to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game and the Alaska State Wildlife Troopers websites for additional information.